Speaksies.
I'm fairly certain I could kill a man if I have to. It's not something I think about too often, but you've been in that situation like where you hear like the sound in the middle of the night.
Right.
And you wake up and you have that moment of like, all right, this might be it. Someone's
Right.
finally, breaking in.
Yes.
And you assume they'll be dressed like a cat burglar from a burglar alarm commercial.
Right,
And I'm pretty sure if I had to,
Yeah.
between, the house full of weapons that I have and also just all the years of watching Roadhouse, I feel like
Yes.
if I needed to tear a man's throat out in the instance, sometimes you don't have a choice. There's a chance you might just have to kill somebody and all you can do is tear their throat out. It's
Right.
plausible.
Yes.
So at the same time, I also know that there was a bird living in a wreath on my front door,
Mm-hmm.
and I was scared to go outside for about 3 days.
Wow. That's quite the dichotomy.
It is. And at the same time that when I've heard the sound in the house
Uh-huh.
and had that like instinct, that caveman protect my tribe
Right.
instinct kick in,
Yeah.
I also know when I opened my door the other day and something shot out of it and flew away,
Ooh.
the terror that went through my body, I think actually I'm less scared at someone coming into my house as opposed to a bird.
Yeah, it's fight or flight. And you've decided that if it's a bird, when that's literally flight,
Yeah.
but it's flight for you also. But if it's one of the guys from ADT, so like a scruffy white guy in a black ski cap, that you're going to go ahead and take him down.
Yeah,
That's good.
especially if he's dressed like he's going to go rob the Pink Panther diamond when he's done
Right.
breaking into my house.
Yeah, those haven't been updated in a while. Well, let me
Yeah.
ask you, how far have you played it forward, like as far as let's get into this. Are you going to
Sure.
really do a throat rip, or you think you're going to use one of your mini weapons, you said?
On the bird?
Well, I meant the burglar because I assumed you want no piece of the bird.
Right. Well, for a burglar, I don't want to give anything away. But I'm pretty
Just in case they're listening right now.
Just in case they're listening, like, you know what? He is a podcaster. He's probably portly with a beard.
Mm-hmm.
And they're exactly right. But I'm not going to give that away. But for the bird, I've started just going out through the side door and kind of making some noise to have him go away.
So you're just going to avoid it until it goes away.
Yeah, well,
go away
there's
soon.
the fight or flight, and hopefully he'll continue to take the flight option.
Right.
But yeah, it's a terrifying situation. I don't know why. Birds always kind of creep me out.
Yeah, birds are scary.
I think it's maybe the years of like being harassed by geese.
Yeah.
Like unless I'm eating them, I don't really have a very good experience with birds. Like chickens, I'm on great terms with.
Right.
Because I take part of their products
Mm-hmm.
in themselves all the time.
Right.
But with just birds in general, they're kind of tough to get an angle on. Like a dog comes at you, at least you got like a large body to like take a shot at or hit with a rock or throat rip.
Yeah.
But like a bird, they're small and they're basically projectiles with beaks on the end. I mean,
Right.
you could end up blinded. That's on the table.
Absolutely. And some birds are worse than others. You mentioned two animals, dogs and birds.
Yeah.
And you were really on point because I got attacked by both of those back when I used to be a paper boy.
Right.
So the dog situation, I was able to fend myself, or I was able to use my newspaper to defend myself.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this huge flock of blue jays attacked me once,
Mm-hmm.
and I just had to sit there and kind of cover my head and wait for
Wow.
them to be done with me and like go away. I didn't get like hurt or anything, but I got jumped by blue jays. So they are, kind of hard to defend against.
Maybe they were trying to beat you into their gang. You might be
I
a
know.
secret Blue Jay gang member.
Well, I was going to say that. I definitely, from the mean streets of Virginia Beach, I can think of a couple times I was jumped.
Yeah.
And one was actually people trying to jump me into their gang, and the other one was the Blue Jays. So I could be part of I should have some sort of lanyard or jacket or something.
We should. I feel like on this show, I seem to have a lot of breakthroughs, but I feel like we've just learned something about you.
I'm part of the Blue Jay gang.
Yep.
All right. Well, on that note, welcome to Origin of Speaksies. My name is Scott, here along with my good friend Steve, and we're going to be getting tonight into the world of nursery rhymes.
All right.
So, Steve, previously you tackled Ring Around the Rosie.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember correctly, you debunked the apocryphal origin about it being about the bubonic plague. Is that correct?
That is correct. There seems to be a lot of folk etymology with nursery rhymes. So I'm very excited. And they always seem to end with black, bleak,
Yeah.
sad sort of thing. So
Right.
we debunked that, but I'm excited to see if we'll be doing more debunking or if we'll be doing some bunking tonight.
Well, we're going to get into it. So I was checking out a Mental Floss article about nursery rhymes with dark origins, and I found a couple that I thought we could dive into, and we're going to start with London Bridge is Falling Down. So everyone knows the song is probably, I was thinking about it, it might be one of the most ubiquitous songs in the English language, right? So the roots of the song go all the way back to the Middle Ages and perhaps even further back. So the earliest records of the rhyme in English are from the 17th century. The lyrics were first printed in close to their modern form in the mid-18th century and became popular, particularly in Britain and the United States during the 19th century. So as I was looking into this, and I was thinking, I have no idea. I don't even know what the London Bridge is. So I mean, you assume it's a bridge in London.
I would guess that also.
Right. And it turns out it is. And the bridge itself has gone through different iterations, has been remade for centuries. And you start to think back about just how, I guess, important bridges are and how important they were. We sort of take them for granted now.
Right, because they're just there. I don't think I've been around for the building of a bridge. It's always been a situation where you're just traveling and you assume it's always there, like the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, which is one of those things that if you think about it, is absolutely incredible. I forget even how long it is, 15 mile long?
Yeah, something like that. Sounds right.
That goes underwater, that connects to connects two sections of land because it's a bridge.
Well, I mean,
in case anyone's not sure what a bridge does.
No, but it sounds, you're kind of laughing, but I mean, it's kind of amazing. And I hadn't even given it much thought, but I was just thinking about the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel and how my grandparents, who are both now passed away, refused to, like, when they would come visit us, they found another way to come so that they did not have to go. I
don't blame them.
They were like, we're not doing this. And it just goes to show you what we sort of take for granted. I've definitely looked at the bridges, as I go over them every once in a while and go, this is a pretty cool engineering feat, So London Bridge is Falling Down. It's almost like you're born knowing that song.
Yeah.
And in a way, we kind of are. Like, when we're going to look at this here and how that song, in one variation or another, has been repeated for centuries, being handed down over and over. But does it have a dark origin or not? Well, let's hope so. It'd be sort of disappointing if not. Now, as far as the tune to the song, I will touch on it for a second, but not spend too much time on it because it's kind of boring. So there was a melody recorded for London Bridge in an edition of John Playford's The Dancing Master, published in 1718, but it differs from the modern tune, and there were no lyrics for that one. So an issue of Blackwood's magazine in 1821 noted the rhyme as being sung to the tune of Nancy Dawson, now better known as Nuts in May.
Could you repeat that last title?
Yeah, Nuts in May. You're not familiar with that one?
Nuts in May.
Nuts
in May.
In
Okay,
May.
not Nuts and May.
Nuts in
Nuts
May.
in May. And that's just fun to say.
I know. It's the only reason it's the only reason it's in the episode, because I don't care about the tune itself.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say Nuts in May.
And I've got to say it too. Thank you.
So in that same tune, and frankly, I didn't even look up what it sounded like because I just wanted to say it. But the same tune for Nancy Dawson, now better known as Nuts in May, was given in Richard Thompson's Chronicles of London Bridge from 1827. So the tune if you just stop for a second and you think about the song, I won't sing it, but everyone can hear the tune, London Bridge is Falling Down, all the way through to My Fair Lady. You know what the tune is, and it's been around forever. So there have been a lot of variations of that tune, but we're really not going to spend too much time on that because it really doesn't have much to do with the story. So let's start here. Do you remember the game that goes along with the song?
I actually don't.
Well, let me refresh your memory.
Thank you.
So the way we would play it as kids would be two players would make an arch while others would pass through in a single file while singing the song. The arch is then lowered at the end of the song to catch the player. So you'd have two people sort of with their hand. You can't see me if you're listening, but I'm doing it with your hands up, kind of making like a drawbridge that's open, right?
Okay.
And as people would go through, you'd sing My Fair Lady. And at the end, they'd get stuck in the bridge.
Okay.
Now remember that.
I was going to say, it reminds me a little bit of musical chairs.
Exactly.
Except I have a feeling this is going to be have a little bit more death and dismemberment potentially with it.
Well, I haven't researched musical chairs, but there's probably something to that too. But I thought the same thing. It's very much like musical chairs. If you happen to be, or like hot potato or something, it's like you're going to if you get stuck at the end, you're stuck. So this is a form of an ancient game that has gone back. Well, I said ancient. And they were called arch games or catching games. So this is a type of game that is, as I did my research, every culture you can think of has these games going back for forever. Right. Where it's something very similar. Because what else were you going to do?
Right. You're outside, you're a kid. If you're under the age of 5, you're not working. You're about to start working, probably. So you play some games with sticks and whatever you have there, and just hope that you don't die.
Yeah, because you don't have a ball, probably. Maybe you have a ball, but what you do have is your arms, and you can sing this tune. So we are going to talk more about the game and how it may tie to old rituals in a bit. I'm going to introduce you to someone by the name of Alice Gomme. It's spelled Gomme, and I actually looked it up on the YouTube thing of how to pronounce it, and it was Gomme.
Gum,
like gum, but gum. But let's talk about the origin of the rhyme. So according to the Oxford Dictionary of Nursery Rhymes, similar rhymes to the way that we know it can be found across Europe, predating records in England. So they include, get ready for some of these other rhymes. This is some of going back, because one of my favorite things is to take idioms or songs or nursery rhymes or things that the way we say it in English, and then hear how some other countries say it.
Yeah.
So we've got Nipples Bro Gar Op on Ned from Denmark. And by the way, that's Nipples Bro with a K.
Okay. Silent
K. There's Die Magdeburger Bruck. Any guesses where that's from?
Well, that's got to be Germany.
That's Germany.
Yeah.
Pont Chus from 16th century France. And Les Portes from 14th century Italy. It's possible that the rhyme was acquired from one of these sources and then adapted to fit the most famous bridge in English. One of the earliest references to the rhyme in English is in the comedy The London Chanticleers, printed in 1657, but probably written around 1636, in which the dairy women Curds states that she had danced the building of London Bridge at the Whitsun Ales in her youth, although no words or actions are mentioned. So there are a ton of versions of this, and I'm not going to read them, or you can look it up yourself. It really doesn't matter. The takeaway here is that this thing has been in our culture. It's kind of like we've talked about some other really old ones. Remember back when we talked about witch hunt?
Right.
How there was just this thing that goes back to the Code of Hammurabi, and even before that.
Right. Kind of a basic societal thing. If you're a group of people functioning together, there's some tenets that are going to be there.
Right.
Hunting witches. And it sounds like this tune.
Well, it's this tune, and it's this tune, and it's this rhyme, and it's said in so many different ways. But I'm going to tie it to something. And I was actually kind of blown away as I started looking into this, because I didn't know that there'd be anything here. I thought it was like you sort of said, hey, there's all these ideas for dark nursery rhymes, but it's all apocryphal. Well, this is going to get into something in a minute that is so dark I couldn't believe it. So the game, the tune, the rhyming, and the words all kind of go back to ancient times, and there are all these various versions that have been around forever. But what do the words mean? And this is where it gets muddy, but also very interesting and fascinating. I guess before I get into this, I should give you a chance. Have you ever thought about what this means? Any theories?
I've always thought, as much as we've talked about bridges and how we've never seen them be built, I would imagine that back in the proverbial day, in ancient times, bridges were built and bridges probably fell down a lot. So I would say during war and battle, they'd be taken out, or a bridge accident happening and a lot of people dying. So I've always thought it was some sort of massive bridge collapse that just killed a bunch of people.
Yeah, so here's some theories from a website called historicmysteries.com. And one is a Viking attack. So the one hypothesis of the origin is that the rhyme relates to the destruction of London Bridge by Olaf II of Norway in 1014 or 1009, depending on your source. The 19th century translation of the Norse saga, the Heimskringla, published by Samuel Lang in 1844, included a verse that looks very similar to the nursery rhyme as we know it. Its London Bridge is broken down, gold is won and bright renown, shields resounding, war horns sounding, and it goes on like that.
Mm-hmm.
It ends with Odin makes our Olaf win. So it is, as much as that does kind of sound like it, modern translations make it clear that Lang was using the nursery rhyme as a model for his translation.
Okay.
Right. So it really didn't come from that. The thing had already been around. And again, this is back from 1014
or 1009.
Or 1009. Right. Please don't write us if you
if you have a copy of the London Times from those years too, you're welcome to send it to us to confirm.
Exactly. So some historians have actually raised the possibility that this attack never occurred, but most historians, because it was written down about 100 years after the attack supposedly took place, would say that was close enough that you couldn't just make it up. So the next explanation is a little more mundane, and it's similar to what you were talking about earlier, which is just wear and tear,
Right. So
until the mid-18th century, the Old London Bridge was the only crossing on the Thames in London, which is a big deal. Like we were talking about before, a city as big as London having this one bridge. So obviously there was a lot of angst over this thing getting damaged over the years. It was damaged in fires over the years. There was a fire in 1633, a fire in 1666.
I think that was a great fire of London that came up in our Ring Around the Rosie episode that ended one of the bubonic plagues by killing everybody.
There you go.
Before the plague got to them, it burned it all out. So
they did a bunch of work on it, and over the years, they were always repairing it, like you said. So certainly, and then the new London Bridge was opened in 1831 and survived until it was replaced in 1972.
Oh, they actually replaced it. It sounds like preemptively for once.
Yeah, exactly. It was like falling down for centuries. So I think you have to say that obviously London Bridge is falling down comes from London Bridge actually being in a state of disrepair, getting fires and things like that. And actually falling down. Right. So the last theory about what the rhyme is about is something called immurement. So if you haven't heard that term... Immurement.
All right.
It's a centuries-old practice of entombing somebody within a structure.
Okay.
And you may have heard of that. I think, thinking back, I'm like, maybe did the Egyptians do that?
Yeah. I think the mafia does it sometimes, too.
There you go. The concept stems from the ancient belief that a human blood sacrifice would somehow assure the stability of a given structure. So many buildings across Europe have revealed skeletons within their foundations. A number of these structures were castles and churches. There was a bridge in Bremen, Germany, that they found contained an immurement sacrifice. And unfortunately, minors were often the victims of these ritual sacrifices. So when I first read that, I was like, well, okay, that's kind of, how does that tie to London Bridges falling down? Right. Well, earlier I mentioned a woman by the name of Alice Gumm. I learned a lot about her, and I actually learned a lot about just that there are people who really have devoted their life's work to understanding folklore. Right. And so I found some websites that talked about Alice. So Alice Gumm was a leading British folklorist and a pioneer in the study of children's games. So what she would do, and this is in the late 1800s, early 1900s, she would observe games being played by the common folk in London. As she observed these games, she started noticing folklore that was present in the games. Unbeknownst to the children, she was making these connections. So, for example, she noted the following about London bridges falling down. And by the way, this comes from an article called Alice Bertha Gumm, a reassessment of the work of a folklorist, and it's written by Georgina Boyes. So as it ties to folklore, the quote is, in the German versions of the game, there are enough details left to convince one that this game was once an enactment of the end of the world, a drama which had been Christianized but was founded on Germanic mythology. The bridge was the golden bridge linking earth and hell. Over the bridge drove Death in his coach, taking with him the soul he had come to fetch, and on the bridge sat its guardian, the Virgin Magdug, judging the souls who passed over. So the tug of war may have represented Ragnarok, the last battle of all, fought between the heroes of Valhalla and the inhabitants of the underworld, when the bridge was shattered by the enemy hosts. So Christianity saw the struggle in terms of angels and devils fighting over the individual souls in front of the gates of paradise. So I don't remember thinking any of that when I was playing this game as a kid. And part of me goes, okay, Alice, if you're a folklorist and you're watching kids play games,
you're thinking, obviously, this is their interpretation of Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Could be you're overthinking it. Or
could be a little bit.
Or maybe not. Who knows?
Well, I mean, I think for that, you're looking for something there, but I think there is some truth a little bit to it. I mean, there are universal themes that that come out in things like kids' games, and that's what her whole life work was about. I started reading this article online that was very long and really got into it, and it was very fascinating. There's a gentleman by the name of Francis Groom, and he had a book called Gypsy Folktales, which recounts a Turkish folktale about brothers who have to sacrifice their shared bride, which, first of all, that's weird. There's like 7 brothers and they have one bride.
Yeah.
And they have to sacrifice her in the foundation of a bridge so that it will hold. The oldest brother is the carpenter Manoli, was making a long bridge. The one side he would make and the other side would fall down, and so on and so forth. He ends up sacrificing his wife, I guess all their wives, after she pleads with him not to. It's really dark. So Grimm said, I hesitated whether to give this story. It's so hopelessly corrupt. It seems like absolute nonsense, but it enshrines beyond question, however confusedly, the widespread and ancient belief that to ensure one's foundation, one should wall up a human victim. So St. Columbia buried St. Oran alive in the foundation of his monastery. In Western folklore, however, the victim is usually an infant, a bastard sometimes, in one case, a deaf mute. But in Southeastern Europe, it's almost always a woman, the wife of the master builder, and in this case, it's Manoli. He also points out that other cultures have very similar folktales. So the previous one was Masons in Southeastern Europe that were largely gypsies that would tell this story. But there's a striking Indian parallel pointed out in the story of 7 brothers and their sister. It's very similar. And here, 7 brothers set to work to dig a tank, but they find no water. So by the advice of a yogi, they give their only sister to the spirit of the tank. The tank was soon full to the brim, and the girl was drowned. So there's this actual thing called, quote, construction sacrifice, which still goes on today. Wow. And so the idea that, so Alice Gom basically said this game, these old ancient games in rhymes where they trap the kid in the base is a reenactment of just centuries old practices where, because of superstition and whatever beliefs they had, there was this thing called construction sacrifice. So when you were building something, you sacrificed someone. So lest you think that this is something that happened only centuries ago, it's still happening. So let's now fast forward a little bit to the 1920s. The Publicity Bureau of India had to make the following announcement. This is the name of the announcement, rumors of foundation sacrifice. Now, granted, it's 100 years ago, but that's not that long ago. Yep. It said the Publicity Bureau has issued the following note. Foolish rumors have been about Madras now for a week to the effect that a child was to be sacrificed at the site of the new bridge. The rumors apparently took their rise in the fact that 1 Muhammadan and 3 Hindu children have been missing in Madras and have not yet been traced, though the circumstances attending their disappearances did not suggest foul play. So, I mean, there's enough smoke here to make me think that there's definitely some human sacrifice going on around bridges, which I really would never have believed. So I started digging even deeper, I literally just Googled human sacrifice bridges. And the first thing that came up was something called Hito Bashira, which is Japanese.
Okay.
And I'm just going to read the Wikipedia on this. Hito Bashira means, quote, human pillar, which sounds awful.
Right. But in Japanese, sounds plausible.
Well, it's not only plausible, it happened. So this was practiced formerly in Japan. It's a human sacrifice. Buried alive under or near large-scale buildings like dams, bridges, and castles as a prayer to the gods so that the building is not destroyed by natural disasters such as floods or enemy attacks. Hito Bashira can also refer to workers who are buried alive under inhumane conditions.
Right.
And I wonder, just now saying that out loud,
Yeah.
I wonder if this is a thing of like, let's make lemons out of lemonade.
Right. I think that very well could
Which
be
is
because
a terrible way to put it. But
yeah, but in those situations, especially, I mean, even now, when you see giant structures being made, there's loss of human life through that, and especially back a pre-union, earlier technology.
my gosh.
And there's a strong possibility the people that are being sent out there to construct this are sent there intentionally with the idea of hopefully they won't make it back, that we'll be okay with that. They're not looked at as people that are desirable a lot of times.
Right. Very true. Right. And I think so there's definitely the belief that there was a belief that, sacrificing a human, and a lot of times an innocent human, was a way to appease the gods. I mean, obviously that's a bigger thing, but to know that there was like this narrowly applied version of that, I was kind of shocked. So this Hito Bashira thing, and the lemons out of lemonade comment just meant, like, for me was like, people are going to die in the building.
We know that.
So we're going to try to say it's for some greater good anyway. But this Hito Bashir thing was happening back from 323 AD and all the way up through the 16th century. So this was a real thing, and there are numerous examples of architectural examples that we know were constructed with human pillar, which just sounds like a really bad horror movie.
But it's actually better than talking about slavery. For some reason, I'm more comfortable discussing
human sacrifice, right? So one last article I found, and by the way, if you want to spend some time Googling, there's way more than I'm going to get to in this segment. I just am shocked how widespread this is. So this is an article from July 24th, 2019. Bangladesh rumors of human sacrifice to build bridge lead to murder of 8 people.
Whoa.
And I'm just going to read this. 8 people have been killed in vigilante lynchings in Bangladesh sparked by rumors on social media of children being kidnapped and sacrificed as offerings for the construction of a bridge. Police have confirmed. The victims, which include 2 women, were targeted by angry mobs over the rumors spread mostly on Facebook that said human heads were required for the massive $3 billion project.
Right.
Police Chief Javed Patwari said, it goes on. This was last July.
Yeah.
Now, it was rumors, but I mean, now listen, we're now going to talk about conspiracy theories, right? Because I was going to say, well, no, if it wasn't happening, people wouldn't be upset and killed, but we did have Pizzagate and other things like that.
An internet mob going after children being sacrificed one way or the other. That would never happen in this country.
Exactly right. But I do think that the thing about specifically for bridge, I would never have thought I would have found an article from last year.
I agree with you.
And I know I said last one, but I wanted to read one more. Just the journal article. Now this is from 1991, but it goes to that term that I think I used before. This is by Gregory Forth in Oceana magazine, but it says construction, sacrifice, and headhunting rumors in Central Flores in eastern Indonesia, a comparative note. So the fact that there's even a term construction, sacrifice, that they're dissecting. Anyway, just the fact that you've got articles about this still going on really makes me think maybe there's something there. I don't know, Steve, what's your take on London bridges falling down and construction sacrifice and the whole deal?
Well, if you would have told me right before we spoke that this was a thing, I face wouldn't have believed you. But the more we talk about it, the more I think historically, one, we talked about kind of like making lemonade out of lemons. When things were being built, there was going to be loss of human life.
Right.
Maybe doing something like this kind of like you try to control what's going to happen anyway.
Right.
Or maybe things were just conflated through history of the massive death. Because in a way, it did equal sacrifice. You were going to send people out there that died.
Yeah.
But to go back to what we talked about at the beginning, I think we take bridges for granted.
Yeah.
I mean, a bridge that was made hundreds of years ago, you had to deal with the frailty of the bridge, the fact that its loss could mean that you were invaded, or that, the gods of, I think we also take for granted how people probably looked at the weather and bodies of water and worship them in a pagan way.
Right.
And it would make sense. You'd want to appease a god for your bridge because you don't want to lose that.
Yeah, no doubt. And I again, there's not like this linear line that we say, but that we say, oh, this is a thing that happened. Some kid was sacrificed, and then immediately they created a game out of it. But like you just said, I think there's definitely something to do, because if you think about it, what purpose is there for this rhyme? And I mean,
right.
Like in other words, with a lot of nursery rhymes, and we'll get to this with the next one, it'll be a little lighter.
Right.
A lot of nursery rhymes have a moral to them.
Don't go off with witches who offer you candy.
Yeah. And what's the moral of London Bridges falling down? I'm not really sure, but maybe it's a way to, oh gosh, I'm going to use a word here that might trigger. Oh, I said trigger. But it kind of normalizes the idea of London Bridge falling down too.
Yeah, you're gonna die. You might, if you're a kid, you might get sacrificed.
Yep.
And what's hit me too is since it still is floating around out there, we might have to update our denouncing list.
Ooh.
With child, we're against child sacrifice.
I think we should. Before we get to your new slang, I just do have to mention this because there was so much to this, and just don't have time to get to it all. We didn't even talk about My Fair Lady. And who My Fair Lady is.
Ooh.
My Fair Lady. So
I'm smelling a part 2.
There could be a part 2 because there's a whole other thing about who My Fair Lady is. But just to not leave it hanging too much, I think that, again, what's the point of that?
Right.
Well, ladies in these stories, fair ladies, were sacrificed as well. So, Steve, we've done over 100 episodes now.
Yeah. You
know that I don't jump on a folk etymology and try to push for it ever because it's like, no, but this is one though that I'll say there's something there.
Yeah. If you're going to go with something, go with the one about child sacrifice.
And now here's new slang.
New slang when you notice. So for new slang, and longtime listeners know, I've been really into getting my new slang from the Reader's Digest, where I think most people get their new hip terms. So for this week's new slang, I strayed from the Reader's Digest. And let me tell you, I regret it immediately. It was a mistake. I decided there was some new slang that really bothers me and I don't like it. And I decided to find out where it came from. And it just got worse. It was like digging into a septic tank that's been around a really long time. There might be a human body here at some point in it too, like that tank story from India that you shared.
Right.
So there's a chance that, you're going to see that figuratively happen today. And the term we're going to look at is clapback.
Yeah, I've heard this one.
Yeah, and the look on your face, you should have that look on your face because it's awful.
Well, because I just picture somebody literally clapping in my face while they're yelling at me. And it doesn't seem appealing at all. Not to steal your thunder with this one.
Oh, there's no way to steal that. And the thought that actually someone would do that as they talk to you to like win you over.
Has that ever happened to you? Think back on high school now.
It could have. But
I feel like I don't know. Like I couldn't tell you a single instance when somebody clapped back. But thinking back, it probably did happen to me at some point, middle school or high school.
Right. So when I thought of this term, there was one person that came up a whole lot that I just thought of being associated with, and that is Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, better known as AOC. So I Googled AOC claps back, and I received over 2 million results.
Are you serious? So she really does clap back?
She does. So let me read a couple of these to you.
Please.
AOC claps back at Trump for mocking her education. AOC claps back at critics of her borrowed clothes on Vanity Fair shoot. AOC claps back at her critics. That could be all of these.
Yeah.
AOC claps back at criticism over selling $58 tax the rich sweatshirts. And for my last one, my favorite one, Ocasio-Cortez claps back at Mike Pence for calling her AOC.
For calling her AOC.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question.
Please.
Do we want our Congress people to be clapping back? And is it, or here's question number 2. That's an unanswerable question.
Yeah.
Number 2, though, is it racist that she's always clapping back, or is it misogyny, or I don't know, something? It's something, because Mitch McConnell talks a lot of trash. Like he'll come back, but I don't think if you put Mitch McConnell clap back,
Right.
that you'd receive any Google results.
So to answer your questions, one, I think no one should clap back. And two, and we will discuss how if someone like Mitch McConnell claps back, it's probably racist.
It's probably racist.
So again, I immediately regret everything, but I'm going for it.
I'm enjoying this though.
Yeah. So and again, I love how we just cruise through something about child sacrifice, and this is the one that I feel like I have to double check how I state stuff as we go through. So, what is a clapback? From Merriam-Webster.com, they have a whole article on it. So, from their article, what exactly is a clapback? They reference an article from BuzzFeed, so you know it's extra good, from February 2015. Not to be confused with a garden variety diss, a clapback is deemed by most as a targeted, often viciously acute comeback intended to place someone in much needed check. The goal of the clapback is, and I'm going to follow their punctuation. That's what I'm going to state it this way.
Okay.
The goal of the clapback is to shut it down. So
are you okay? I feel like this has got to be sucking the life out of you.
Oh, it gets worse. This is nothing. Like if we stopped here, this is paradise compared to where this goes from.
All right, keep going.
The term itself, and this is again quoting from coming from Merriam-Webster's article, derives itself from a 2003 song by Ja Rule, appropriately titled "Clap Back." The phrase is the meat of the hook. Clap back, we gon' clap back. Which answers what Ja Rule and his crew will do to rappers who disrespect them. And please note, this is all from Merriam-Webster.com, which has now just gone down.
Well, I was about to say Merriam-Webster. What the hell? You're referencing BuzzFeed, and no disrespect to BuzzFeed, but when I go to a dictionary, I want to see some like professors. I want to see something other than BuzzFeed.
Yeah. Well, guess what? You got Ja Rule.
And Ja Rule,
who, to his credit, at least is not Chief Keef.
Well, he's not, but Ja Rule, just a quick tangent. Mm-hmm. If you haven't seen the documentary about the Fire Festival, he's like a big part of that.
And I don't know where he's been since like the year 2000 or apparently 2003.
He's been nowhere. He just has the name Ja Rule. Like he's not good. I never liked him anyway. And this makes me like him.
You're not going to like him
less.
Yeah. This is not going to help you. So continuing from Merriam-Webster.com, the clapping here isn't literal. Ja Rule references another rap to explain what clapping back is. All these wanksta snitches let the Nina blow kisses. If she somehow misses, he gon' meet the mistress. And clap that boy like Birdman in Clips. So continuing to dig our hole, Clap That Boy is a reference to Birdman's 2000 song, What Happened to the Boy? Featuring Clips and on the eponymous album Birdman, in which the boy in question snitched and we quote, "We put a clap into that boy." Continuing, you may think that clap in question is a well-known clap that means a sudden blow.
That's what I would have thought.
It's not.
Oh.
And this is all quotes. Mm-hmm. In this context, clap refers to shooting someone. The word refers to the sound of a handgun shot. It shows up in rap lyrics back to the early 1990s. Oh. Now, here is the only bright spot in the darkness from this. We get to reference one of my favorite older rap groups, Das Effects.
I did love
so that is good. So this will be the one bright moment before we go way, way worse. Lickety let the nines clap, 'cause I'm back.
That's good.
And I liggity love talking about Diggity Das Effects.
Oh, yeah. I won't do it, but I could do their big hits. They want effects. I could probably tell you every word, but they were actually good. As opposed, in my opinion, I will make a hard stand. Ja Rule was terrible. Yeah. And the other ones I never heard of, but Das Effects was good. So.
And speaking of terrible, let's go to Urban Dictionary.
Oh, yeah. Why not?
So Urban Dictionaries, their top definition of clapback is basically a comeback, most likely pumped with attitude, sass, and or shade.
Right.
And the quote they give is, "He called her ratchet. You should have heard the clapback." Ugh. So you might ask, why am I still doing this? I'm not really sure. But
well, it is interesting. The clap being the sound of a gun is very interesting, actually. I wouldn't have tied those together. So
yeah.
That's good.
So to make it even worse, I'm going to tie it into Twitter. So one of the things that prompted me to do this was being on Twitter, which is going to be even worse. And you would see a statement. And normally it's from someone telling you, it's kind of the, shut up, he argued sort of person.
Right.
And it'll be a statement in which between the words are emojis of clapping hands.
Ugh.
And I'm just going to make up one right now.
Okay.
Trans, clap. Women, clap. Can, clap. Play, clap. Golf, clap. To, clap. Something like that.
Did you just make that up? Because that sounds real. Okay.
But that probably is out there somewhere. Maybe if I ever ripped off your tweet, I apologize.
But what is that? Like, you see that on Twitter, and then you see a bunch of people liking it or whatever, but it's like, what really just got said?
You could make any statement. You could make the most baiting statement that you could about the benefits of bacon or cows or how kale is from the devil. And once I see those claps with it, I don't care what you have to say. You have found a way to make me not like you and have a visceral reaction to that. So going to an article from bustle.com, what does the clapping hands emoji mean? Here's a statement. This emphasis clap, or as Urban Dictionary has dubbed it, the ratchet clap, quickly made its way into the mainstream. Examples of it can be seen everywhere, from SNL's 2016 Sound of Music sketch with Ariana Grande to a bit titled Black Lady Sign Language by comedian Robin Thede, performed on The Nightly Show. The emoji of clapping hands has existed in Unicode since 2010, but truly started to pick up speed in 2014. So as you can guess, with it being from Ja Rule and emerging from hip-hop music, it'd be more associated with black culture. Mm-hmm. So we discussed earlier that AOC can clap back, but could Mitch McConnell? So I'm going to go to an article from Vice magazine entitled The Clap and the Clap Back, How Twitter Erased Black Culture from an Emoji. So if you can guess from that title, the author is not in favor of people doing a clapback unless they are of a certain culture and category. And I'll leave it at that. And for attendees of our post-game show, I did some research on the author and found some interesting things about this individual that I'll share for our Patreon, our Speaksy supporters on Patreon. So at this point, I'm just getting annoyed with this and don't want to talk about it much anymore. So clapping back, I don't like it for a myriad of reasons. Mm-hmm. One of mostly that's maybe the most non-emotional version of it is that it's another way to be dismissive of people.
Absolutely.
You're not having a retort. You're not having a comeback. You're not having an argument. As the initial definition pointed out, the point of this is to shut someone down.
Right. And
to do it in an obnoxious way. And some of the research I did also mentioned the video from the Nightly Show, where someone demonstrates that this basically is clapping. The claps are supposed to be you're in someone's face, and as they're talking to you, they're clapping along, which is not a good way to win an argument, I found, or persuade me. Maybe it's a good way to win an argument by ending it, but it's not.
It's a good way to get punched.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's like the okay boomer. It's like calling someone Karen. It's just a retort that's mildly funny, but it's only funny because you're being so dismissive to the person.
Right.
There's this thing now, and this may be a future new slang called like try hard. I don't know if you heard that used as a noun. So Logan uses it. Mm-hmm. But there's this thing where it's like cool to not try. So if you try to make like a real structured argument and you really put effort into it, and then a person just dismisses you,
right,
it's so frustrating for the person making the argument, but it's like the cool thing to do is just dismiss. So God, I just sound like an old fogey, but the clapback thing is like everyone's, oh yeah, you got him with that clapback. It's like, what? You didn't even say anything clever, Right. So anyway,
I think clapback should be put into a tank and sacrificed, and hopefully it's a septic tank. And that's our very positive new slang.
All right, so next up is another nursery rhyme, Humpty Dumpty.
Humpty Dumpty.
Which is a fun one. So, but if you really look at it, it is one of our more bizarre nursery rhymes.
It's one that everyone knows, but like if you think about London bridges falling down, there's some sort of logic to it. This one doesn't seem to have any real value.
No, it doesn't. And the rhyme is definitely, again, one of the best known in the English language. So the common rhyme that we know, which was came from 1954, this version, is Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. So let's establish that. So, Steve, when I say Humpty Dumpty, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
First thing that comes to my mind is this nursery rhyme that everyone, I don't remember, like almost like London Bridge. Like it's ubiquitous. You just know it. I don't remember a time in my life where I didn't know it.
Yeah.
But almost as important, it makes me think of one of my favorite, maybe my all-time favorite rap song.
Oh, wow.
The Humpty Dance by Digital Underground. Now, I didn't intentionally bring this up when we spoke with MC Search because it's more of a West Coast thing.
Mm-hmm.
I want to keep our discussion East Coast because I know there's beef sometimes between the two coasts. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm hiding my feelings, without a good reason. I just want to make sure we were able to give MC Search a very East Coast vibe through our discussion.
Right.
And I will kind of go on a tangent here.
Please.
And this is as good a time as any to bring this up. One of the best and / worst moments of my life was several years ago at an organization I used to work at, having a discussion with the CEO. And I had, during the day, done some research on the group Digital Underground, like to see how much it would cost to have them perform somewhere. And the price was very reasonable. It was a plausible, in the same way that, people sacrificing humans kind of on the table of happening.
Right.
The price for this was, a couple people could get together and make this happen.
Sure.
And then discussing this with the CEO, he proceeded to sing most of the first half of the song of the Humpty Dance, just impromptu. And it, again, was one of the best moments of my life and most terrifying. Kind of went back and forth. It was like walking on a high wire. But it's a very good memory.
What was terrifying about? Oh, just seeing the CEO of a company.
Well, just
you're like, I'm working for a guy that knows.
A few minutes before, I appreciated that he knew it so well. It made me feel closer to him. But at the same time, I'm like, well, he's going, and he's not just kind of walking through it. He's like giving me. It's like I'm there with Humpty Hump right now. So I'm very happy that we discussed this.
Right.
Frankly, after talking about clapback, we could talk about human sacrifice again, and it would be an improvement. So I'm very glad that with Humpty Dumpty, I could talk about Humpty Hump and Digital Underground.
Well, are you in a better mood now?
Oh, certainly.
Okay, good. Let's. I just thought of this as you were talking because I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite songs, but I definitely enjoy Digital Underground. And a few years back, this was a while ago because I remember, you remember butt dialing?
Yeah.
You don't butt dial anymore because we all have smartphones, but it used to be you'd program numbers into your phone and you'd accidentally either call somebody back or whatever. And I got a call. I'll never forget. I was in my house and my old dumb phone started ringing. I picked it up. It was Adam, our friend Adam. And he's laughing hysterically. And I'm like, what's so funny? He goes, dude, you just butt dialed me. And I was so happy because all I heard was the Humpty Dance playing because apparently I was playing the Humpty Dance at full blast and butt dialed him. And I was like, yeah, man. He's like, it's good to see that it lives on. I'm like, of course it lives on. I'll always there. You have to be in a mood for it, but
yeah.
So anyway, Humpty Dance, Humpty Dumpty. I never really connected the two, but if for no other reason that you're in a good mood, I'm really glad. And if you don't know about Digital Underground, go back and check them out. I think of a couple things. The first one is actually you came really close to it when you said, again, like we're born with it. You knew it from the time. I remember when I was a kid, one of my first memories, I had to be like 2 years old or something. And my mom was holding me. It was in my room, my nursery or whatever it was. And there was a picture of Humpty Dumpty on the wall. And I was learning to talk. So maybe I was not even 2 yet. And I pointed at the picture and said, Mommy, and she wasn't happy with that. And so I still very distinctly remember calling my mommy or calling Humpty Dumpty that looked like my mom. And she was like, what the hell? Yeah. The other thing I think of is the hilarious Ricky Gervais sketch, which I want to play a little clip for those of you that have not heard this. You should listen to the whole thing, but here's a quick clip of Ricky Gervais talking about Humpty Dumpty.
How is that applicable to 5-year-olds? I have never worked out the moral to Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. All I can think is, don't sit on a wall if you're an egg. But again, how is that applicable to a 5-year-old human? I mean, you tell that to a group of 5, oh, so don't sit on a wall if you're an egg. Oh, well, what do you mean if I'm an egg? I'm not an egg. It doesn't make sense. If I'm none of us are eggs. If there was an egg there, it wouldn't make sense. Because you go to the egg, don't sit on a wall. You go, I'm an egg, I can't eat, I've got nothing. I've got no ears, no eyes, I don't know what the What? Don't sit on a wall, I can't f***ing hear, I've got nothing. I'm in nothingness. I can't f***ing climb walls for a start, so... Don't send horses to perform medical procedures. Of course they couldn't put him together again.
So, as you hear there, the first time I heard that, I laughed about as hard as I've ever laughed. And he really makes you think about Humpty Dumpty and what was the point?
Yeah. And it will forever be in my mind of that is now whatever even we discussed today it'll be tough to jump what he had to say about it.
Totally. And if whatever you take from this, if the only thing you take from the Humpty Dumpty origin is his take on it, then it's worth it because it's so funny. What was the point? What was the moral that was being passed on to little kids? So one theory is that it warns kids to stay away from heights.
Mm-hmm.
Another is that a bad deed or a mistake can't be put right sometimes, which is
probably a pretty good,
realistic.
Yeah, and I think that not that I use Humpty Dumpty a lot in discussions, but we have we do talk about at work. There's sometimes things that are broken that you can't put back together.
Yeah, it's. I had never thought of it that way. Frankly, I don't sit around thinking about Humpty Dumpty ever. One thing that I thought was interesting is that I found that Humpty Dumpty has been used to describe the second law of thermodynamics, which describes the process known as entropy, which is a measure of the number of specific ways in which a system may be arranged, often taken to be a measure of disorder. So, long story short, it kind of reminds me of no free lunches. There are different little idioms or nursery rhymes that can be used in science. And this one is basically as something degenerates or becomes more chaotic, it's really hard to get it back to being in order, right? So I thought that was interesting. So what is the origin, though, of Humpty Dumpty? Does it have a dark origin? Well, I will say this. First things first, I think just the fact that Humpty is never actually called an egg in the nursery rhyme is a little dark in itself.
Oh, that is.
Is it an egg? Is it a human being? What is happening? So I turned to a website that I've never used before, which is Ripley's.com. And strangely, the guy, I can't think of his first name, but Ripley from Ripley's Believe It or Not, had a lot of theories about Humpty Dumpty. And so they have a part on their website about it. So the name of the article is called The Exciting Truth Behind Humpty Dumpty, which sounds kind of fun. But then they get you with the subtitle, which is The Real Life Humpty Dumpty May Have Been Capable of Annihilating Military Forces.
Whoa.
Yeah. So in the article, it does point out that, like I just said in the nursery rhyme, there's no mention of an egg. And, now we have this idea of this anthropomorphic egg. And that comes from Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll, which came out in 1871. And I'd kind of forgotten that there was even
that's right.
Yeah, Humpty Dumpty. But before that, Humpty Dumpty wasn't necessarily even thought of as an egg. Well, Steve, I'm curious if you know about this. I didn't know about this. They also mentioned in the article that apparently Humpty Dumpty was a Batman villain. Have you ever heard of that one?
I remember Egghead, but I don't remember Humpty Dumpty. I'll have to do some Googling.
Well, Humpty Dumpty was literally a Batman villain who would break things and put them back together. That was like his big, which as in the article, they talk about how it's kind of probably not the most exciting of Batman villains.
And the internet has confirmed what you just had to say, which is it had to be a pretty bad day, or there was some other, in the same way that Lewis Carroll is potentially on some chemicals during that time. Maybe that's the same thing that happened with Humpty Dumpty appearing in Batman.
Exactly. So again, in this article on Ripley's.com, they talk about, the whole thing about annihilating military forces. So the original story predates Carol's take on the character, so prior to Through the Looking Glass. According to a number of military historians, Humpty Dumpty was the name of a cannon used by the Royalists during the English Civil War. The conflict raged from 1642 to 1649, and in June of 1648, Humpty Dumpty was stationed on the walls of Colchester. It was one of the several cannons erected to try and keep Parliament's army from taking the city. The next month, however, the parliamentary forces heavily damaged the walls beneath Humpty Dumpty with their own artillery, and you can guess where this is going. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall and broke into pieces. So the cannon broke. As for all the king's horses and all the king's men, it seems those lines can be taken literally. The royalists or cavaliers were very much the king's men fighting in support of King Charles I, who would go on to lose the war and his head, paving the way for Oliver Cromwell's brief stint as Lord Protector. And we've talked about him on the show. So, there's different variations of this, which is either there's the cannon that fell and broke, that's Humpty Dumpty, or it's King Charles I who was beheaded. He was Humpty Dumpty. There's actually Richard III that some people say was Humpty Dumpty, trying to tie it to Shakespeare's depiction of Richard III. As far as this canon theory, there's really no evidence that the tale is the origin of the nursery rhyme. In 15th century England, Humpty Dumpty was really just a snarky nickname for someone who was fat. So it was just kind of slang for an overweight person.
Yeah, and it makes sense for that. It has a good cadence to it, and no one, just the way it sounds. Yeah. You're not going to hear someone's name Humpty Dumpty and be impressed by them. It's just, it's a good put down of somebody. It's a good way, maybe a precursor to clapping back, is you could give them a disparaging nickname. That's the old style way to clap back at someone.
Absolutely. So what does it mean? Why? Let's go back to what we started with. I sort of was looking for a dark origin on this, and the closest I got was the cannon or someone being beheaded. That's a stretch. But what is it? And this kind of makes sense to me. So someone named Emily Upton had an article on Today I Found Out, and it was called The Origin of Humpty Dumpty. And it says Humpty Dumpty is a character in an English nursery rhyme, probably originally a riddle, and one of the best known in the English-speaking world. Now that makes sense. Okay, yeah. Because they don't say it's an egg, but you're sort of meant to figure out and what is. That's why it kind of doesn't make sense. All the king's men and all the king's horses couldn't put it back together again, and the riddle is that it's about an egg. And so the first recorded versions of the rhyme do date back to the late 18th century England. The tune goes to 1870 in James William Eliot's National Nursery Rhymes and Nursery Songs. It says its origins are obscure, and of course there are several theories, as we've been discussing. But did you know Humpty Dumpty was popularized in the United States on Broadway by actor George L. Fox in a pantomime musical, Humpty Dumpty, which ran from 1868 to 1869 for a total of 483 performances. It was the longest running Broadway show until it was passed in 1881. So according to the Oxford English Dictionary, in the 17th century, the term Humpty Dumpty referred to a drink of brandy boiled with ale, which I don't even know what that means.
Sounds like a Boilermaker. Sounds like a way the only thing to make this ale better is to put some liquor into it.
Yeah, okay. I guess that's the use of the word boil there. That's a good point. And it says that the riddle probably exploited for misdirection the fact that Humpty Dumpty was also 18th century slang for a short and clumsy person, as we noted. So the riddle may depend on the assumption that a clumsy person falling off a wall might not be irreparably damaged, whereas an egg would be, right? So going back to the whole riddle thing, Humpty Dumpty being a name of a drink, but also slang for like a drunk, kind of sloppy, short, fat, clumsy person. Yep. You're being misdirected that you think it's a person, and so the riddle is that it's an egg. So not so dark. But let me just wrap up this segment with one of my favorite things, which is other languages and Humpty Dumpty, similar riddles in other cultures. So similar riddles have been recorded by folklorists in other languages, such as Boule Boule in French, Little Trill in Swedish, and Norwegian. I don't know why this is funny. It's not even funny. And Runzelken, Punzelken, or Humpelken, Pumpelken in different parts of Germany.
I lickety like that. Maybe that's...
Das Effects.
Yeah, Das Effects.
Oh my gosh. Although none is widely known as Humpty Dumpty in English. And I think what it is, the German, they normally have stuff that sounds so dire and
Right.
rough. And this is Runzelken, Punzelken, and Humpel. I can't even say it again. Humpelken, Pumpelken. It's just so absurd. So there it is. Dark nursery rhymes. We'll see if we do another one of these because as you mentioned before, mostly it's debunking, but I still think it's kind of fun to talk about.
But there was a lot of bunking in this too. I feel like
Yeah.
I've learned some things. I've learned some things I like. I've learned some things I don't like.
Right.
I've also learned that even on a very dark and sad episode, that Das Effects can still...
They're still relevant in this day and age.
They're riggedy relevant. Thank you for listening to Origin of Speaksies. Please follow Origin of Speaksies on Twitter and Instagram at Speaksies. You are always welcome to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And finally, if you want to support our show and receive bonus content and extra podcasts like the post-game show, become a Speaksies supporter at patreon.com/Speaksies.
Bob's your uncle?
Watch out for bears, and kale is from the devil. Trans, clap. Women, clap. Can, clap. Play, clap. Golf, clap. Two, clap.
Speaksies.